None of us will ever forget where he was and how he felt when the news was announced. In New York City, for a handful of people, the place was the sidewalk beside the open door of NBC News reporter Gabe Pressman's automobile, listening to the loudspeaker of the car radio. They had known for some minutes that the president was gravely wounded. Then came the instant when the worst was confirmed.
A flash from Dallas. Two priests who were with President Kennedy say he is dead of bullet wounds. This is the latest information we have from Dallas. We are, of course, standing by to give you all available information as it comes to us. I will repeat with the greatest regret this flash. Two priests who were with President Kennedy say he has died of bullet wounds.
I find it hard to believe.
Two sources.
Please go ahead. It's hard to believe it. Hard to believe it's right.
The president died approximately 25 minutes.
There was a stunned silence and a groping to come to terms with a fact that was almost beyond belief. The face and voice of a young girl summed it up.
Bleeding and unconscious.
Here's the Parkland Memorial Hospital in Dallas.
To Parkland Memorial Hospital in Dallas.
What's your feeling right now?
I really couldn't say. Really, right now I just don't know what to do. I don't even know where to go, what to say. Nothing for me to say.
Now, for a report from our mobile unit in Chicago, we go to Chicago and Russ Bensley.
The flagstaff tells the story at the corner of State and Madison Streets. Beneath it, the bright lights, the Christmas demonstrations, but they have no joy today. Here in Chicago, the crowds who came downtown to shop are standing around in silence and sorrow in the rain. And the strange thing is you don't even notice it's raining. And if you do notice, you don't care. Most of those who have talked to us here share the universal feeling of shock. Some have a feeling of anger. And we thought we'd let you hear how they feel. Sir, how did the news of President Kennedy's death affect you?
As a man of God, I would say that I felt the impact of the sniper's bullet. I would also say that I felt the pain that the president had in his dying moments. Thank you.
You, sir?
I'm shocked, very shocked at this. We read about many countries losing their heads of government through assassination, but I never dreamed that it would ever happen to our head of government. I'm very sad indeed.
Thank you. How do you feel, sir?
It was once said that history repeats itself. Look at Abe Lincoln and John Wilkes Booth. The rain you see here in Chicago is not rain, it's emotion.
Sir, how do you feel?
Well, I feel shocked. I can hardly express my emotion, and I hope that the country will survive.
Ma'am?
I can't sit up.
Sir?
I just couldn't believe it when I heard it. We were in school. All of a sudden we were just told the president was dead. It didn't seem possible.
How do you feel now?
Like a daze. You don't know what's going on. Why? Why did it happen? Who would have done such a thing is the question.
Sir?
This is a dark day in the history of America. This man, I think, wanted to save America. He is not dead. His spirit lives. We are sorry, deeply moved over this incident here in America. I'm sorry.
I just can't believe it. I feel like someone in my own family is dead. I just can't believe it.
Feels like a loss in the own family, and I think it's a great loss to America.
Came up the street, and I thought, no, it's not true. We are not without our president. We live in a Christian country. President Kennedy was a Christian. please God, help his wife, his family, give strength to his mother and his ailing father. We will miss a great friend and a true Christian.
We will all miss one of the greatest presidents that ever was. Thank you.
I was shocked when I heard it, and, well, they closed the city hall in respect to him. Everyone else is truly sorry it happened. And that's all.
Ma'am, how did the news affect you?
I was shocked, deeply shocked. We've lost a very good president. He was for the poor people, and that's what we need, a president like that.
Those are typical reactions in Chicago, and I imagine they're fairly typical of the reactions across the country. It is several hours now since the news broke, and the mind still reels at accepting the fact, and it will continue to be an incredible tragedy for days to come. This is how Chicago feels. This is how the nation feels. This is Russ Bensley in Chicago. Now back to CBS News in New York.
Shortly after the news of the president's death, CBS News correspondent Bernard Eisman went out into the streets of New York, and here is his report.
As the news of President Kennedy's death spread through the city, to those who hadn't heard it or had heard only the first fragmentary reports, even this street, which is normally so loud you can't hear yourself talking to another person, acquired a stillness that it's never known. Wherever there was a radio or a television set, people gathered to listen. Can you tell me what your first reaction was, ma'am, when you...
Tragedy that ever happened to this country since President Lincoln.
How about you, sir?
I couldn't believe it, that's all. I just couldn't believe it.
And you, sir? What was your...
I didn't believe it.
Who do you think would do something like this?
I don't know. I can imagine in a way. I can imagine.
How about you, sir?
Well, I feel very bad, that's all I can say.
Can you imagine who would do something like this, sir?
Well, I don't think anybody in their right mind. I think this is a terrible thing for our country, not only for our country, but for the entire world. I mean, after all, one does realize that we are striving for peace at the present time, and a thing like this, well, it's just an utter tragedy.
You, sir, do you think that this indicates some sort of an illness in America today?
I don't understand so much, sir.
Thank you very much. Have you been thinking about what's happened in the last few hours, sir?
Yes, I have, and I'm deeply shocked. I'm ashamed that this sort of thing can happen in America.
And how about you, sir? Have you had what are your first reactions to a tragedy of this sort?
My first reaction, sir, is that I hope these Southerners, these radicals, are satisfied they got their pound of flesh, and killing a man as good as that.
Are you certain that it is right-wing radicals or people who oppose the president so desperately that they would do something like this, who committed this act?
Yes, sir. Could be no one else. Someone who do this must be mentally deranged. No clear-thinking human person would ever think of doing something like that.
How about you, sir? What was your first reaction?
Well, my first reaction was I was terribly shocked. I couldn't believe that it really happened. But I disagree with this man about it being a right-wing radical. It could have been communist, I think, probably something like that.
And how about you, ma'am? What?
We were all crying in my place, all crying.
You look as though you've been crying. Is that how it struck you first?
Yes.
How did you hear about it?
Well, we got radio in my place and they told us.
Did all of the people in the office cry?
Yes.
And the office then was let go and sent home?
Yes.
And how about you, sir? What reaction do you have? How do you feel after a thing like this has happened?
Disgust.
We are now going to go to an NBC mobile unit, which is outside the NBC building here in New York, for pictures and sounds of the reaction of citizens of this city to the loss of their president. We go to NBC reporter Jeff Pond.
We're on the street outside the NBC studios in Rockefeller Center. Sir, how did you hear of the president's assassination?
Gentleman came into an office in which I was transacting business and mentioned it to us, and at the time I really wasn't able to believe it. I had to hear it myself, and unfortunately I did very shortly afterwards.
What is your feeling now?
I'm terribly shocked and saddened by it, and I would add angered by it.
Why angered?
I think it was a horrible, senseless thing, and I hope that the rest of the country feels the same way.
Do you think that this assassination somehow reflects a climate of opinion in the country now?
I hope that it doesn't reflect a climate of opinion that is very prevalent in the country today. It certainly obviously reflects an opinion that some people hold. I hope that as an American and the other people as Americans do not generally hold this feeling.
You said some people. Who do you mean by that?
I don't feel expert enough to express an opinion, but the only evidence that I have as to who these people are these ultra-conservative groups that have been distributing literature and spreading hate in Texas, and who attacked Ambassador Stevenson was about a week ago.
A little longer than that. Of course, no one knows if these people are indeed responsible.
No, certainly not.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, what was your reaction?
I was very shocked and saddened by the president's death. I was getting some eyeglasses fitted when I first heard about it, and then I was riding on a bus when they finally told me he was dead.
Do you find it difficult to believe even now?
I really do. I really find it difficult to believe now.
The president was in Dallas, which is, of course, part of the South. Do you think that somehow his racial policies are in any way connected with this?
That's the first thing I thought of when I heard about it, yes. I thought that probably some segregationist crackpot or something, just they had it all planned out, and I really believe that his blood will be on their hands forever, yes.
Thank you. How about you, sir? Do you believe it even now?
This is the first time in my life I honestly say I'm not proud to be an American. Right now I'm serving in the armed forces and I'm just home on leave, and it's an understatement to say it was a shock. I first did not believe it, and I have trouble believing it now. I just don't think it reflects the thinking of most people. As was stated before, I think it's a small minority, and it's just an unfortunate day for the United States that this can happen. This is something that you read in history books and just never want to believe that can happen when you're living.
Do you think this in some way reflects on the security arrangements that the Secret Service?
There are random samplings, what are called man-in-the-street interviews, people here in New York City, their reactions to the loss of the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, who died approximately an hour and 45 minutes ago in Parkland Hospital in Dallas, Texas, after being fatally wounded by a sniper.
This is Ed Hogan of WFAA Television in Dallas, Texas. We are standing on the grounds of Parkland Hospital, where President Kennedy was brought just a few hours ago and has died, as most of you have already know. We want to possibly talk to some of the people here who are standing. What is your name, please?
Mrs. Quincy Adams.
Mrs. Quincy, are you from Dallas, Mrs. Adams?
Yes.
How does this affect you?
Well, it's just a complete shock, and I think it's just means a doom for our country.
Well, it's a terrible thing, and it's shaken up and shocked everybody.
Well, it has, and I think Dallas will never get over this.
Thank you very much. May I speak with you, please? I'm Ed Hogan of WFAA TV. If you turn around on this, what is your name, please?
Mrs. Schofield.
Mrs. Schofield, how do you feel on this?
Pretty terrible about it. We're from Loveland, Colorado. We're just down here for today. Just got down.
Oh, you are?
I have a daughter bad sick.
Hospital here. It's all broke up over a hit-and-run accident the other day.
Well, I'm awfully...
That's what we're trying to get in now to see her.
Well, I'm awfully sorry.
I just feel terrible about this. I just think it's one of the most terrible things that's ever happened.
It certainly is that, and thank you so much for speaking with us. May I ask your name, please? I see you're wearing a banner, Lanny. Colts. I wonder if you have a football game tonight.
Yes, sir.
I would imagine. What school do you go to?
Cary.
To Cary School here in Dallas?
Yes, sir.
How do you feel? What is your reaction to this terrible thing that has happened to our president?
Well, I just can't see why anybody would want to shoot Mr. Kennedy for all the things he's done for us and tried to keep us from getting into war and everything.
I see. And who is this with you here?
Don Myers.
What's your name?
Don Myers.
Don, how do you feel on this terrible
I
day?
just think it's just a shame because, I mean, I don't know why anybody would want to kill him.
Thank you very much for speaking with us. We might get over here. What is your name, please?
Gary Verts.
Gary Verts?
Uh-huh.
And Gary, you from Dallas?
Yes, I am.
How do you feel? What is your reaction to this terrible thing that has happened?
Well, it's a bad thing that's happened. I think it shouldn't have happened here, really, because it's going to give this place a real bad name.
Thank you very much. I believe right now this is about all the people that we have here within the proximity of our length of cord on the microphone, but we will repeat. We're standing on the grounds of Parkland Memorial Hospital in Dallas, Texas, where just a few hours ago the President of the United States was brought. His body was brought here after an assassin's bullet, a sniper, took away his life at a very early age of 45 years.
So let's try and switch back to Hollywood and Vine and CBS News correspondent Charles Kuralt.
Even at this late hour, people are still passing this corner in Hollywood with tears in their eyes. I saw a woman a few minutes ago walking along with a baby in her hands, and she was clutching the baby, and tears just pouring from her eyes, obviously trying to comfort the child in an attempt to comfort herself. What's your name, sir?
Ernie Lowenstein.
And how did you hear the news of the death of the president?
I was delivering cleaning to one of my customers when I heard the television say the president had been shot, and then also heard the maid say, "My God, they just shot the president."
What was your own feeling?
Well, I felt deeply hurt. That's the only way I could put it. I was not shocked as badly as the maid, but I felt very, very hurt.
What's your name?
My name is George Kaiser.
And where were you when you heard the news?
I was in the stock exchange.
What happened there?
Well, immediately the news came over the ticker tapes at the stock exchange. Everybody was shocked, and the stock exchange immediately closed down, and finally closed down with a loss of 21 points.
And what was your own feeling?
My own feeling, while I am a Republican, is that it's a shame and a disgrace that anything like that could happen in this country.
Thank you, sir. What's your name?
Penny Robinson.
And where were you when you heard that the president was dead?
I was working at a telephone company on the switchboard, and all of a sudden the lights just started flashing like Christmas. It was too fantastic, and our supervisors told us what had happened, and people just started calling all over the place, and nobody could believe it. There's no words to express what happened at all.
It's true that there are no words to express it, and that feeling is obvious all around us on the streets of Los Angeles. This is Charles Kuralt at Hollywood and Vine, and we return you now to CBS News headquarters in New York.
All over the world, people are going to remember all their lives what they were doing when they first heard that President Kennedy had been killed.
For the reaction of some Dallasites, here is CBS newsman Nelson Benton.
This is the corner of Elm and Eckerd Street in Dallas, Texas, late afternoon. And these are average citizens of Dallas, Texas. Could we ask your reaction to the president's death today?
Well, we were just horrified when we heard that we couldn't believe that he had been shot. I heard we were working, and someone came in and told us that the president had been shot, and we just didn't believe him. That we didn't think that anything like that could happen.
Is this your wife?
Yes, it is.
May I ask you, what was your reaction?
I just couldn't believe it. I had only seen him just moments before, alive, and then...
You watched the parade?
Yes, I did. It was horrible.
How do you think the city of Dallas feels about it?
I think they think it's horrible.
Everyone I've talked to is just, they just can't believe anything like this could have happened here.
Didn't believe it at first. They came down there at the bank and telling us, and we just didn't believe it because we just walked down just a few minutes before it happened.
You were at work at the time?
Yes, I was at work at the time, so I couldn't believe it.
What was the reaction among the people at the bank?
Well, none of us could believe it until we got phone calls from our friends and relatives and everything, hearing it on the radio and then telling us, and then we came to realize that it had happened. We just couldn't believe it.
Thank you very much. Could I talk to you a moment, ma'am? What is your reaction to the tragic events that occurred here
I
today?
can't believe it. I just can't believe it.
Where were you when you heard about it?
I was at work.
Had you seen the parade?
No, we hadn't gone down.
How did you hear about it?
One of a department head from another department came in and said that President Kennedy was dead, and none of us, we just couldn't believe it.
Well, when I heard the news, I was so stunned, and it just shocked, and I'm still nervous. We lost a great man.
We take you now to the heartland of America and the reaction in Chicago.
The scene here on Chicago's State Street this gloomy, rainy afternoon is much the same as in any American city. Groups of people gathered about wherever a television set is displayed. They now know the news. They know the president is dead. They know that Vice President Johnson has become President Johnson. This was always a Kennedy town. Whenever Mr. Kennedy came to Chicago, as he did a few times since entering the White House, he was greeted by huge throngs. People would wait along the lines from O'Hare Airport to the center of the city for hours just to catch a passing glimpse of him. There was never any doubt about how the election would go in 1960. Everybody knew that Chicago was a Kennedy town. And the reaction of the people here today, well, they're just numb. Disbelief, all those trite phrases that come to mind, they apply here. Here's a young man in the crowd who's been standing here watching the ABC report of the sad events. Did you ever see the president?
Yes, sir.
When?
In the political campaign of 1960. I was one of the workers for him. Saw him right before a huge torchlight parade that we had about a month before the election, and he shook my hand and asked me about all I could tell him was my name. He asked me a few questions. I was just kind of in awe of being near such a great person, and all I remember him saying then was, "Keep up the good work," and he congratulated not only me, or told not only me to keep up the work, but the whole party system and all the young people in particular.
What are your thoughts now, young man, as you know that your president is dead?
Well, I feel it's a terrible thing, but it's something we're going to have to live with. And I don't think we should fly off the handle and start blaming groups either to the extreme right or the extreme left. It's something that happened. The killer should be brought to justice, but I don't think it was any particular group.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Ma'am, what's your reaction now that you know that President Kennedy is dead?
I think it's a great loss to the country and the whole world. President Kennedy was a good man. I think it's a great loss.
Did you ever see the president when he came here?
No, I've never seen the president. But as a mother and as a wife, I can understand the grief of his family and to the world. It's a terrible loss.
You're thinking now of Mrs. Kennedy?
Yes, I'm thinking of Mrs. Kennedy, his mother and his wife. Yes.
Well, that's about it. Here's a little girl. Do you know that the president is dead?
Yes.
You ever see the president?
No, I haven't.
You've studied about him in school, though,
Yes.
haven't you? What are your thoughts, honey?
Oh, well, I thought that was a terrible disgrace that the president is dead, and I feel very sorry for his wife, and I don't know what else to say.
Well, that's about all there is to say. Crowd gathered here, just standing around, trying to absorb this awful news. This is Frank Reynolds on State Street in Chicago. Now back to New York.
That was Frank Reynolds in Chicago.
It is difficult to say exactly how the nation has reacted to what happened today in Dallas, Texas. It is difficult to say how long it will take for the full realization of what happened to really sink in. But there are these random observations made in the New York area today which may prove of interest. Over at St. Patrick's Cathedral, within the hour, I noticed that every available candle in the church was already lighted. There was not one that you could walk in and light in offering of prayers for the soul of President Kennedy. Across the street from the cathedral, one of the Fifth Avenue department stores had lowered the blinds on every single display window on 50th and 49th Streets and on Fifth Avenue, save one. The corner window at 50th and 5th held an oil portrait of President Kennedy and about 6 dozen red roses. That is all. There is this note on how some school children found out about what happened today. High school children in one New Jersey town were told, bluntly, truthfully, exactly what had happened. Grammar school children in the same town were told only something dreadful has happened. Go straight home immediately after school. They did, and told their mother that something dreadful had happened and asked what it was. The mother turned on the radio, and the family found out together exactly what it was and just how dreadful it is. Trying to assess now the impact on citizens in the city of New York of what happened today, and here is a report from NBC's Gabe Pressman.
For the first time since the death of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the lights of Broadway have been blacked out voluntarily. The theaters are closed. The Great White Way is dark. Normally tens of thousands of people are here. On a Friday night tonight, the streets, relatively speaking, are deserted. A large cluster of people around our mobile unit, but the stores are closed. The signs are dark, and here in Times Square, the bustling, exciting atmosphere of a normal weekend night is missing. In the faces of the people and talking to them, you hear again and again the words incredible. I still don't believe it. When I heard the news, I cried, I prayed. The atmosphere is most solemn. It is most depressing. We've seen those sailors here tonight with sweethearts on their arm. We've seen no smiles, no laughter. The cop on the beat here is Patrolman Martin Friedel. Patrolman Friedel, have you ever seen Times Square like this?
All the time I've been here, I've never seen it like this. I mean, it's really something. You can sense the remorselessness on the people's faces. You can see it on them, and you can also sense it. I myself and all the officers I've seen, I've talked to, they all feel the same way. They all have like an open feeling in their stomach, just like I have. It's really something. It's really bad. I mean, even in the station house, there was no kidding around or anything like that today. Everybody was just dead serious.
And you yourself?
Myself, like I said before, I've got an open feeling in my stomach. It's really tragic.
Very few people here compared to a normal Friday night.
Well, this is by no means a normal Friday night. Not by any means, not close to it. All your theaters are shut down, all the movies. The people are around, but Broadway is not Broadway tonight. Not the way it usually is.
Jim, Jules Bergman is waiting in Times Square with reaction there. We go to Jules Bergman.
This is Jules Bergman reporting from Times Square, from 44th Street and Broadway in the heart of New York. There is shock and indignation and most of all sadness at the death of President Kennedy here in the heart of Manhattan. A crowd of hundreds has gathered, still unbelieving, still not quite fully able to comprehend exactly what has happened. But there is sadness on their faces and there is disbelief. The flags here in Times Square have been lowered to half-mast. New York's theaters have announced they're closed tonight. There'll be no performances as long as the president lies in state. And even us, we too suffer from the shock. With us in this crowd, a GI back from Germany on leave. What's your name, soldier?
Vincent Bokikio.
How has this shock hit you?
Real bad.
What do you feel about it?
It tightens up inside. He was a good man for the services. I liked him a lot. When he voted, if he ran again, I would vote for him again.
And a lady here waiting this past hour as the crowd has gathered here, listening to headlines, listening to radio news on the story. What is your feeling about it, ma'am?
This shock. I was for Kennedy, and I was going to vote for him. And I was for him. And I just can keep from crying. I really like it.
Do you believe it? Do you believe it has really happened?
Well, it was told to me so nonchalantly that I almost fell off my chair at work. It just spread through the office very fast, and they let it down.
What about you, sir? What is your reaction?
I was quite shocked. I think the world has lost its greatest leader. And I just can't believe that anybody could be as miserable as that to do what they did to our great president.
Do you feel the people will go on, the nation will not lose its impetus?
No, we'll just carry right on. We're a great nation. And we'll recover. It's a great loss.
What about you, son? You've been here, watched this happen.
Right now, I'm more concerned about the country and the people and what their reaction is going to be. And I think that each of us are going to have to think about more the responsibility that the President Kennedy used to talk about, so that something like this can't happen together, and that maybe we can hang together now at a time where we're really going to have to be together now when the country needs this responsibility that President Kennedy has talked about. I think,
Go ahead, go right ahead.
I think that it's more important now to think about America and about responsibility, about being in the home and comforting those who are close to you, and ringing on your neighbor's bell and comforting your neighbor, and talking to the person next to you, comforting him and having him comfort you, so that if need be, you'll be able to assume and accomplish what you'll have to.
In other words, as if you lost a friend or a relative?
No, it's as if we've lost someone who has assumed the responsibility that we should have assumed all along, and now we're going to have to pick up where he left off, where he had to leave off.
What's your feeling, sir? You've been sitting here.
This is the most dastardly act against mankind that I can remember. The assassination of our great president.
And so, shock. Here's another man. What is your feeling, sir?
My feeling is after 42 years recent retirement from the government in Washington, D.C., although a Republican, I think government workers have lost one of the best friends he has ever had for the benefit of better working conditions for all people. And I sincerely hope that whoever did it will bring him to justice so quickly, because he was a great man, a good man, and he believed, after I have spent 42 years, just recently retired, he was a friend of all people, regardless of race, creed, color, religion, or national origin. And I'm deeply from South Carolina. Thank you.
A personal loss is the only way we can describe our feelings, and this crowd of hundreds, this man swarm that is the heart of New York, can describe its feelings. This is Jules Bergman reporting from Times Square.
All across the United States, people are still, I think, perhaps responding more with disbelief even yet than any other single emotion to the tragedy which occurred today. This is mingled with shock and anger, and a genuine puzzlement that this sort of thing can happen in our country at this late stage in our development. One of the places where we have had cameras brought out and mobile units set up is in San Francisco. So for a sampling of the mood in that West Coast city, we now go to station KRON-TV in San Francisco and Jerry Jensen.
The atmosphere of gloom and silent despair which has fallen over every part of the United States today is very clearly in evidence here in San Francisco. And any difference in the reaction of the people here on the West Coast is perhaps due to the difference in time. Because of the time difference, people in San Francisco learned of the tragic assassination of President Kennedy even before noon today, so that they have had one half of a whole working day to contemplate this tragedy. A large crowd is now gathered. I'd like to get some reaction from you people. How do you feel about hearing this news?
I still can't believe it. I know it happened, but I still can't believe it.
Where were you when you first learned of the death?
I work here at the Chronicle. I was at my desk.
Sir, what are your feelings?
I was shocked and almost beyond belief. I was at work when I first heard of it in Richmond, and knew somebody came into the office and mentioned something about it. It's still too much to believe. I'm very saddened by the horrible thing that happened. It's almost impossible still to comprehend the terrible disaster.
Thank you. And you, sir?
Well, I think this is something that everyone in the country shares the blame for, and I hope that everyone
especially the Southern white moderates, take every possible step they can to see that it never happens again or anything like it. I hope that the moderates, especially in the South, do everything they can to quell this type of fanaticism and stop it. This is going to destroy the South and perhaps the whole country.
Sir?
Well, sir, I worked for the Chronicle in the printing department as a machinist, and I was very saddened and shocked. Everybody I worked with was very heartfelt and sad. Mr. Kennedy, who has helped to do so much for our country, uniting for peaceful purposes and banning the bomb and civil actions that Mr. Kennedy was always for, and I feel it's a great loss to the country.
Thank you, sir. Perhaps the best reaction is best summed up: a hero is dead, and the people know it. This is Jerry Jensen reporting from San Francisco.
And I believe NBC's Bill Ryan has an interesting footnote to this story.
Yes, Frank, when you get a story as big as this one, the facilities of all the news-gathering organizations are devoted to it, and so you get a tremendous amount of information. Among the items turned up is the fact that it was a $435.71 United States government loan that enabled Lee Harvey Oswald to come back to this country 18 months ago after he'd spent 2.5 years in the Soviet Union. This is the man who was under arrest in Dallas, Texas for the murder of a Dallas policeman today, and who may have been the man who fired the shot that took President Kennedy's life. It is standard procedure for an American citizen when he is in trouble overseas in a foreign country and unable to get home to go to the United States Embassy or consulate and appeal for government funds to get him home. Apparently this is what Oswald did in the Soviet Union 18 months ago. The government gave him $435.71, and that's how he came back here.
Our reporter, David Schumacher, was outside the White House and talked to some of those people. Let's look at that film now.
Could you tell me what you're thinking as you stand and look at the White House as you have for a long time now?
Well, I'm picturing JFK the way he was, and I just can't see him now, not existing anymore.
Well, I was thinking that possibly the only thing we could do is to pray that Lyndon Johnson can carry on.
Well, I think this is a tragic day. Yesterday was a tragic day. And I think all are deeply moved by what has happened.
It doesn't seem possible. It seems to be such a waste and such a tragedy. It's just not, it doesn't seem possible.
Well, it seems unreal. Like, this can't happen in our country.
I feel the profound grief that's around the whole area, and that something dreadful has happened, and uncertainty about what is going to happen after this.
Well, I think that we all, more than with any other president, I think the people of the United States have identified themselves with the Kennedy family, and I think the grief that we all feel at this event, this tragedy, is much more real and much more personal than if it would have happened to other presidents. And I think I came here to express my own sympathy to Mrs. Kennedy and to all the family, and to the whole United States, actually, for the great loss that we have suffered.
I don't know. I'm just confused. I'm wondering why. Why would anyone? What kind of an animal would do that? It's so stupid. It doesn't make any sense to me. But just words. I just can't describe just how I feel at this time. It just seems empty. It just doesn't seem like anybody else could fill the place the way he did.
There was a deeply human quality about the scene out here in Lafayette Park today. While across the street, President Lyndon Johnson and other high officials of the government have been going into the White House to see the body of the late President Kennedy lying in repose. Out here in the park, despite a gray, bleak day, despite the driving rain, People have been standing all morning, huddled under umbrellas, just standing and watching. These are some of the people who have been out here. What is your name, please, and where are you from?
Ralph Corbello, Washington, D.C.
What are your feelings of today?
Well, it's a real bad day, but I'm happy to see so many people to come out and at least come by and try to express in their own way how they feel. It's a bad thing for this country, of course, and I think for the entire world too.
Thank you
That's
very
what sums it up.
Thank you very much. What is your name, please?
Eugene Margolis. I'm from Alexandria, Virginia.
How do you feel today?
Well, I think that everybody has their own reactions to this terrible thing that happened to President Kennedy, but I think that this weather, this downpour, sums it up for everybody. I just think it's terrible.
Thank you. What is your name, please?
Dolores Bierschbeck,
And you're from where?
Washington.
And what are your reactions today?
I still don't really know what to think. I don't think I've ever felt so depressed about anything. I guess all everybody can do is just pray that everything works out okay. Our government is led in the right hands, and that's all.
Thank you. Ma'am, what is your name, please?
Edna Hinson Osborne, Macon, Georgia, and formerly Palm Beach, Florida.
How do you feel about today and what has happened?
I am so sad, and I am lost for words. It's a great loss to the nation, to our country, to our people. I am sure that God will give us the needed strength to carry on.
Thank you very much. Miss, what is your name, please? Would you step out here?
Sarah Higginbotham from Upper Marlboro.
How do you feel today?
Just terrible. I had no idea anything like this would happen in America. I know we've been having our bad times, but nothing like this.
Why have you been standing out here?
Well, I sort of had to see it to believe it. I didn't believe it really could happen.
Thank you very much. That is a summation of the feeling out here. People are still stunned, still shocked, and they've come to pay their final respects in their humble way to the President, the late President of the United States. This is Richard Valeriani, NBC News in Lafayette Park.
An amazing thing that has happened in Dallas this morning. Lee Oswald has been shot. How seriously, we do not know.
We're outside of the courthouse where a crowd of several hundred had gathered, awaiting the arrival of Lee Harvey Oswald. 10 blocks away at City Hall, that arrival stopped by apparently a bullet. This crowd, when word flashed through the crowd that Oswald had been shot, broke out into a cheer. The crowd has been dispersing for the past 5 minutes, many of them just getting the news. What's your reaction to hearing that suspect Oswald has been shot down?
Well, I can't hardly say what right now, but I think that the people wanted a quick decision on his execution and get him put away.
Do you think that was the right justice for him?
Well, I think he should have been tried, but people sometimes take the law in their own hand on a thing like this.
Young man, how do you feel about it?
Well, I don't think anything can be too bad for him, and maybe trial wouldn't have done anything different. He would have been shot anyway.
What about you, Cameron?
Well, maybe the Lord wanted it this way, and maybe he didn't. Maybe this is the best thing for him, I guess. Maybe it's not. It's my opinion.
Ma'am, how do you feel about the shooting of Oswald?
Well, I just feel like this is too good for him. I think he should have had a trial. And I think he should have suffered more than what he has suffered now. And longer.
Were you drawn out here today by the prospect of getting a good look at him? Was that why you were here?
No, we just came down to see where the president was shot.
How do you feel about it now?
Well, I'm just real sad.
Sir, what is your reaction to what has happened this morning at City Hall?
Well, I think he got what he deserved if he's the one that did it.
Had you come down here to see him yourself?
No, I'm waiting for a train at 1 o'clock, and I just happened to stroll down to see the scene of the accident. I've walked down through here many times, Cleveland, Ohio.
Thank you very much, sir. As you can see, a crowd genuinely not very sorry that Oswald has been the victim of an assassin himself.
This is the exit where Oswald came out
but he did not come out the way police had intended him. The armored car was to have come through here, taking Oswald to the county jail. When the shot occurred and an ambulance arrived, he was taken out here and driven to the hospital. There were about 200 people on hand at the time. The crowd has grown now, wanting to see just what had happened. Did you hear the shooting?
I heard a shot.
What do you feel about this?
Oh, terrible.
Do you all feel bad about this?
Very, very bad.
The police wanted to make sure this man got a fair trial.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
We're sorry that he wasn't tried.
Well, apparently he is injured and they've taken him to the hospital.
We hope he lives where he can be tried and brought to justice.
Apparently a small man, an elderly man, came down with a small pistol.
We heard a shot.
You heard the shot?
Yeah, we heard the shot.
What happened out here after you heard the shot?
Well, we heard the shot, and then they pulled the armored car away. When they pulled the armored car away, why, everybody started running, and then all of a sudden this ambulance must have gone out another entrance, because we could see it up the street there. And everyone said, well, he must have been shot. And they started running to this building. I'm from out of town. I'm from Ohio. And we started running to this building here. We thought he was coming out this building here. So he has been shot. I just found out.
How bad is he injured?
This one? Did you hear the shot?
Oh, no, sir, I didn't hear it.
You heard the shot?
I sure did, yeah.
How do you feel about this?
I don't know. I can't tell you.
Apparently Oswald was shot.
That's the way I understand it, yes.
Did anyone else hear the shot?
I heard it. I did.
I heard it and I told him, I said, I bet he got shot. And he did. How do you feel about this?
I don't know. I hadn't reacted yet. I just don't know.
Dr. Tom Shires, Chief of Surgery at Parkland Memorial Hospital and Southwestern Medical School, advises me that Lee Oswald is currently undergoing surgery for a single gunshot wound that entered on his left side and did not exit. The patient is in extremely critical condition. Dr. Shires will make a personal statement when the surgery is completed.